Hey, everybody. It is February 10th on Tuesday at 3:02 p.m. And I'm going to go ahead and take you through a process. I apologize, by the way, this video is going to be longer than some videos. And please know that you can have your AI agent summarize it. But I'm going to take you through the process I went through this morning as I'm working on the question of how we use agents and teams and swarms. I was inspired by a couple of friends that were doing YouTube videos on Moltbot and how to use Moltbot, and then swarms, and then how Kodak is working with teams. And anyway, so it kind of went through a process. And I'm going to start with the process that I went through. So I've logged into my Perplexity Pro account, and I simply said, explain Ant Farm as an agent swarm and how the code works and installs. Okay, so that was the first thing. Just using Perplexity for some research. Kind of interesting. I was like, yeah, okay, because Ant Farm is a one line install that I could do. That'd be pretty cool. So I was like, yeah, that's cool. What are examples of Ant Farm workflows um, that follow for PR? So as we're doing development, how do we do PRs with Ant Farm? And then I got a little more specific. I said, and by the way, I'm going to go ahead and maybe make my screen a little bigger. Well, I think you can probably see my screen. If you can't, make your screen bigger. So I'm hoping, so this is the key sort of prompt that we started with. I'm hosting my OpenClaw in DigitalOcean because I didn't want to root a Mac Mini. And I said, I want to install in such a way that there's no PII, but I want to use all the connectors, connect to OpenAI, Anthropic, and a few other AI services, and use Ant Farm to demo an agent swarm. So create a demo app with a step-by-step for this, with a visual workflow, show a demo of a set of agents building agents, each wisdom guide on agent creation from Databricks, Salesforce, Microsoft, Copilot, Glean, as well as GitHub for Copilot for the integration, with Cursor and a step-by-step install on DigitalOcean, step-by-step visuals with the installs, scripts using Bicep or other scripting, maybe Python, and do it in a way that I can call it the Hall of Justice League portal of agents, building agents as an app, install guide, and PRD ready for Figma. So what I love about Perplexity is that it just came out as the best deep research tool. So it talked about some high-level architectures. We did some iterations. It talked about, and I currently host my OpenClaw or Moltbot or whatever we're calling it today. I think it's been like 5 days and we've changed the name 3 times. So it talked about going through the process. I was like, okay, that's kind of an interesting process. So really I can set up a swarm and then I want to demo agents building agents. So each is a wisdom guide. So I say, hey, I've got a problem. All of you go out and figure out the best way to do it. And then I want to have an implementer agent to create the starter file and code and repo. So each of this is an OpenClaw agent. So we have Oracle, Salesforce Sentinel, Copilot Architect, Glean Librarian, Copilot Cursor, Mentor, and Justice League Implementer. So that's all good. And then Justice League Reviewer. The reviewer ensures that the new agent acceptance criteria, no PII, uses correct connectors, providers, has login before opening. So I said, create a new Salesforce and Databricks aware agent. Okay, right? That's the thingy that we did. Now, part of the problem is we have non-deterministic input, non-deterministic output, and everybody wants us to have deterministic results. Well, that's not the way the world works. So we can get to higher levels of probability, but so create the YAML file. Here's the sample workflow. By the way, I've ultimately put this all in a GitHub repository you can go look at, so you don't need to copy the screen or anything. Please don't send me mail asking for it. It's just in my repository. So I have a new agent request that's a visual flow for Figma, right? Here's my nodes and the awareness. What's the lovable handoff? And so I did this for a few different tools that I use a lot. What are the scripted install helpers, right? For Bicep. Because I do a lot of hosting on Google and Azure. and frankly, AWS. Sorry, it's been a long day. Here's the PRD for Figma and Lovable. And so I said, draft in order the end-to-end file, versions, prompts, results, sources, authors, and keep a log. I love to do version control. So a friend of mine said, always do version control. That's probably the most important thing here. So we have the artifacts to draft. So this is going to be a one-pager, technical architecture, the swarm flow, the agent definition catalog, the operators for DigitalOcean, really the run books, the demo script for the walkthrough, the PRD, and the UX, right? Then it added the end-to-end logging, right? And then we said do a human readable file to explain what each of these things do. We did it with Python because Python is something that's pretty accessible to most humans on the planet. We're going to wire it into Ant Farm. And then I said, update the demo with all this thinking, add a link to each document, make it possible to show the workflow, edit the files and see the agent flow change, and then add a role with the job description for each of the agents. So write a job description, guardrails, observability with code to support, and dashboard showing the end-to-end input and output. So we have the demo app completed, right? And I apologize. Normally my videos are a lot shorter. This will just be longer because this took a long time. So that is a thing, and I'm sorry. That's kind of the physics of this. So adding observability, right? Prometheus, right? Open telemetry. What do the demo screens look like? So here's some demo screens. Think of this in the terminal. So if you're not a developer, this probably doesn't look very cool, but we spend a lot of time in our terminal flow. So here's the portal, here's the swarm, and depending on, by the way, because this is agnostic to any particular provider, but we need to know what each agent is doing, who the reviewer is, what the counsel is, what the synthesizer is, and the tester. So we take a look at this. What's the human review? Then what's the code to support the routes in the swarm? Keep going. Here's the approval endpoint, the guardrail. By the way, guardrails are the very last thing before the car goes over the incline. So and here's the walkthrough script, right? So home, trigger, watcher, files, and then the human in the loop queue. Okay. So as well as the visual assets, create some sort of version of what we want to think about. So this is what each of these agents looks like, and then I said create both the Next.js starter repo and the exact Figma prototype JSON and the GitHub repository to support the end-to-end prototype using rules, style guides, GitHub actions, and all the other best practices for vibe coding that adheres to the best practices for coding. And prior, it's got memory of what I call Vibe Rant, which is all the best practices in the world from about 1960. Support Cursor, integrate the thinking, art, flow, and code into the demo portal step by step. So a non-coder or coder can benefit from the prototype thinking of the Hall of Justice League. So here's the portal production demo. This is the GitHub repository, all of the code, all the JSON, all the package, right? The integration pieces, Tailwind, Figma prototype. And the Figma prototype is interesting because you can just copy that. Potentially we can just take it here and we could even just put it, I'll just take it into Lovable. I'll do this one kind of in real time just to show. So I can take any of the prototype code that I have as Markdown and log into my personal Lovable account here and get logged in. Oops. Oh, I guess I need to do it. Fingerprint here. And I won't take a bunch of time in Lovable, but I think those of you that haven't used Lovable, if I've got the Markdown file from Figma, Lovable will get the general idea. And I'll just go back to what I'm doing here and let that cook for a little bit in the kitchen. So as we go through here, I've said, here's the Hall of Justice League repo. This is what I want. This is what we'd like to do. Here's my droplet. Here's the screen. And the droplet, by the way, if you're not familiar with DigitalOcean, is really the hosting, sort of little virtual machine that I have there. Give me a step-by-step visual. Explain each step with tooltips in English and French. I want to record this screen Want to share the whole package for easy download. Um, and then it started to create the visual storyboard, right? If you double click there, whoops, double click on the storyboard, it shows you DigitalOcean, SSH. It actually shows each of the steps to do the deployment. Okay. Then it shows each of the demo screens. This is in terminal, not very exciting, and the complete download, which is kind of cool. That seemed okay. Um, and then it generated the demo file and the Figma prototype. I was like, well, that's kind of cool, but I'd like you to do more. Because as I was watching and learning with some other folks, talking to friends, is so customize it on my own GitHub repository, right? I'm going to go ahead and do that setup here. And I was actually working on an iPad, so it was a little bit hard to do it because I wasn't able to definitely to sort of do direct manipulation like I'm used to on my MacBook. So I said, hey, what would be smarter? And that was really fun to do. I always kind of use any of my tools that tell me how to be smarter. So the vendor wisdom knowledge base. So look at the live docs from each vendor about what their current agent architecture is. By the way, if you've been following along, it keeps changing every 10 minutes. What's the confidence scoring? That's a great one. Vendor specific playbooks, if they have them. What is drift detection? Because obviously over time, things go from gooder to not as gooder. Conflicting vendor wisdom, live vendor sandbox testing. How do the agents compare to each other? How do you solve some of these declarative AI policy violations? Right. So that was kind of cool. And we ended up with so with each change, do a different screen, right? So we did a generated. I'm not sure we can see the generated thing here. I'm not sure it matters, but again, this is terminal flow, which for some people isn't a fun thing to look at, but I like to look at terminals. And it also gave me new features, right? It said, here's drift detection. Each of these new things is a new component because I said, give me blocks, things like policy or drift or wisdom. Updated PRD, updated the Figma ready screens, auto-generated the storm, and then here's the storyboard and the demo guide. And I said, hey, add Slack integration too, Teams integration. What are the trigger points? What's the structure? Right. And I'm showing this also so you can do this yourself. This is a process of, this is as good as the 40 years I've spent in the business and the day that I spent thinking about this, right? Is so combine this entire workflow, show the creation process end to end, give me the full downloadable docs, right? And at this point, I started using my agent, right? So in Perplexity, I actually said in agent mode, give me these things and start to create them. Here's a rewritten pre-production app. Here's the Figma prototype. Show me the money. I could download that. I've actually downloaded all of this before, and this is all do it as a Gamma presentation, deploy this for a non-coder. Tell me what's the value, right? What are we getting out of this? So governance, architecture, scale, and audit. What are the consumption instructions? How do we actually use the package, build the app, run this end to end? And then it passed the results. It also renamed everything based on global notions of superheroes. Kind of cool. What's the execution proof? How do we do the screen recording? Right. And now suggest the end-to-end best practices using Uli Homan and the architect Scott Guthrie at Azure and my own Bob Vibrant principles about good design. So it actually went through and looked at those practices and it said, and I love this, if there's no business value, don't do it, right? Hybrid by design, no rip and replace. Automation as code, iterative experimentation. God, I love this, right? And by the way, thank you, Uli. Thank you, Scott. I love the way you guys think about this. And thanks, Uli, for all the other folks in that architectural conversation over the last zillion years together. So here's the GitHub repo. Here's the new prototype screens. And then here's the security checklist that we added because we were missing a good security checklist for best practices based on those other architectural concepts from smarter people than me. Uh, and then what's the deployment checklist? How do you do zero trust? We added that, added the architecture diagram, added Ant Farm, added identity, zero trust API, cert process, and so forth. Again, I won't read the screen to you, although I'm reading some of the screen to you. Now, as I was watching this morning, looking at the new codecs, the Claude Code teams, co-working, that sort of stuff, I said, so now change this to 3.0, but add the best practices from Codex, Claude, CoWork, Reboot. So take everything we knew and add to it some new architecture building blocks, which is swap models without recoding, right? Because I don't know who's going to win. I think everybody does some things well. We're going to change some production code. We're going to check. We're going to add some more checks for quality checks, for instance. We've added a new storyboard. So how do we go through the process, right? And then create the end demo and actually deploy this. Now, this is where I said, put this in my GitHub repository, right? So I'm going to show you that in a few minutes. And I did that with my agent that actually did the setup. I answered a few questions and it set up all those screens, which is cool. Deployed it at GitHub, right? And here's the actual .env examples, and here's the actual blocks for code for the Hall of Justice League, right? So that's the thing. And then I asked my agent to wire this into an orchestrator, right? And then create the whole project as a demo in Descript. Okay. So it takes me through, here's the narrative, right? And I also put this as a README, by the way, in the GitHub. So here's all of the things we talked about, all the things we did. Here's the why and the what and the how, right? And then here's the 3-minute YouTube demo script that we asked Descript to write for us. And we put all of this in the GitHub repository because, that's a good idea. And so it's in the Justice League. It's called Justice League V3 model agnostic. It's public, right? And this is what a prototype in Lovable looks like from just the markdown that we gave it. By the way, this is just a prototype. So it says, here's the steps. Here's the live swarm flow. This is each person doing each of these things, doing their thing with a command center that shows us just the beginning of what it might look like as a swarm. And then finally, I'm going to actually show. So please go, if going to GitHub and looking at a repository is interesting to you. I'm going to do my video here and show you that the video
problem,
that we
AI agent
did
chaos.
had
Everyone
my
wants
voice,
AI
but it
agents,
had
but agent
a
swarms
female
can become a
avatar.
security
So
nightmare,
anyway, here's the
especially
roll-up
with
video.
tools like OpenClaw and dozens of vendor connectors. We need something more like the Hall of Justice than a bot farm. Introducing the Hall of Justice League portal. So we built the Hall of Justice League portal, a governed agent hub where expert Justice League agents from Databricks, Salesforce, Glean, Copilot, and GitHub Cursor work together to build new agents safely. Agents building agents. A feature request enters, a Codex planner decomposes it into steps. A Claude research team, Databricks Oracle, Salesforce Sentinel, Glean Librarian gather best practices. A CoWork coder turns that into production code. A tester block auto-generates jest tests. A Justice League reviewer and a human JD approve the PR before anything ships. AI GovOps and Zero Trust. We wrap the entire swarm in AI GovOps and Zero Trust, OWASP ASI Top 10 Agent Risk Checklist, MTLS and JWT identity for every agent, sandboxed vendor connectors, confidence scoring, drift detection, policy gates, and full audit logs. Model agnostic building blocks. Under the hood, everything is model agnostic. A YAML models file routes planner, researcher, coder, and tester to OpenAI Codex, Claude Code Teams, or CoWork. Swap a model, not your architecture. The impact, the result, 5 to 6 times faster feature delivery, 90% plus reduction in security risk, and full auditability for regulators. The entire stack lives in a GitHub repo, ready to fork. If you want your agents to behave like a Justice League, not a bot swarm, this is where to start.
That was useful, and I'm gonna go ahead and get it published. And I apologize for the length of time, but I hope it was fun, everybody. Thank you.